What really happens inside maximum security? The screams echoed through the concrete walls of Pelican Bay. A fight had exploded in the prison yard, and by the time the guards rushed in, two men were already bleeding on the ground. One inmate was stabbed with a sharpened piece of metal, and the other was kicked so hard he couldn't get up. The sound of sirens filled the air as guards fired warning shots to break it up. Prisoners dropped to the ground, their faces pressed against the dirt, while the tension in the air made it clear this was more than just a simple fight. Something bigger was brewing. And just as the guards thought they had control, a second group of inmates began shouting and rushing in from another corner of the yard. That was the moment everyone realized. This wasn't just a fight. This was the beginning of a riot. But how did it all come to this? To understand what really happens inside a maximum security prison like Pelican Bay, we have to go back to the daily lives of the men trapped inside. Each day starts with the sound of heavy doors slamming open, a reminder that freedom is gone. Prisoners live inside tiny concrete cells, no bigger than a small bathroom, with a metal bed, a sink, and a toilet. They are locked inside for 23 hours a day, and many never touch another human being. Some prisoners describe it as being buried alive while still breathing. In Pelican Bay, power is everything. It isn't just about surviving day to day, it's about which gang controls the block. The Mexican Mafia, the Aryan Brotherhood, and the Black Guerrilla family each claim their corners, and every inmate must choose a side, or be forced into one. Even something as simple as who sits where in the cafeteria can turn deadly if the wrong person crosses into enemy territory. Prisoners quickly learn that one mistake could mean bloodshed. Yet, not every moment inside is chaos. There are quiet times, too, when prisoners spend hours reading old books, writing letters, or staring at the walls. Some draw sketches on scraps of paper, while others lift weights in the yard. For a brief moment, the prison feels calm, almost ordinary, but that calm never lasts. Everyone knows violence can explode without warning. The guards are always watching, but even they admit they can't stop everything. Some officers have worked there so long they can sense when trouble is about to break out. They describe the way the yard goes quiet before a fight, how the prisoners' eyes shift, and how a single look between rival gangs can signal a coming storm. Guards carry pepper spray, batons, and even rifles from the towers above, but the inmates are creative, turning toothbrushes into knives and hiding weapons inside their cells. One prisoner, who had been inside for more than 15 years, told a visitor that prison life is like living in a cage with lions. You don't sleep deeply, you don't trust anyone, and you never let your guard down. He explained how alliances made inside often stretched far beyond the walls. Deals for drugs, weapons, and even murders were arranged from within the prison. In other words, Pelican Bay wasn't just a prison, it was a headquarters for crime itself. Still, for some inmates, the long days of isolation take their toll. Locked in solitary confinement, men begin to lose their minds. Some scream through the night, banging on the walls until their hands bleed. Others stop talking completely, retreating into silence. Psychologists have warned that long-term isolation changes the brain, making men more violent or hopeless than before. But inside Pelican Bay, this is considered normal. Then there are the riots, the extreme events that turn the prison upside down. Sometimes they start with something small, a fight over a seat, a stolen item, or and a look that lasted too long. But in Pelican Bay, small sparks can lead to explosions. Guards say the most dangerous moments are during yard time, when dozens of rival gang members are together in the same space. It only takes one word, one gesture, and the chaos begins. On that day, the chaos came fast. Two gangs had been plotting revenge for weeks, waiting for the right moment to strike. The yard was filled with men doing push-ups, jogging in circles, or standing in groups when suddenly, fists started flying. A weapon flashed in the sunlight. One man went down, then another. The guards scrambled to restore order, shouting commands and firing rubber bullets, but the fight spread like wildfire, with more and more prisoners joining in. Blood stained the ground, and the air was filled with shouts, curses, and the sound of boots pounding against the dirt. Guards sprayed canisters of gas, but many inmates fought on, their eyes burning, their lungs choking. The prison alarm blared, echoing across the walls. For those few minutes, it felt like Pelican Bay was no longer under control. And then, in the middle of the smoke and chaos, a guard spotted something that froze him in his tracks. A group of prisoners moving together, not fighting, but heading toward the gates. They weren't just rioting. They had another plan. The smoke still hung in the air as alarms screamed across Pelican Bay. Guards shouted for all inmates to get down, but the group of prisoners moving toward the gates ignored every order. Unlike the chaos happening behind them, their steps were calm, steady, and frighteningly organized. One of them carried a long metal shank. Another had wrapped his arm with a towel soaked in blood, and the rest walked shoulder to shoulder like soldiers on a mission. For a moment, even the other inmates froze, unsure if they were watching an escape attempt or something far worse. The guards on the towers above raised their rifles, ready to fire if necessary. But this wasn't a run for freedom. It was something else. The seamen had been planning for months, and now, hidden within the chaos of the riot, they were going to strike. Before the guards could react, the group split into two. One side created a distraction, shouting and throwing pieces of broken wood toward the watchtower. The other side stormed toward a rival gang leader who had been standing near the fence. The target tried to run, but within seconds he was surrounded. What happened next was brutal. Swift stabs, fists slamming into his body, and shouts echoing in the yard. By the time the guards fought through the crowd, the man was lying still in the dirt. This wasn't just violence. It was a message. No one was untouchable, not even inside Pelican Bay. After the attack, guards forced everyone to the ground. Pepper spray and rubber bullets rained down until the chaos began to settle. Inmates coughed and groaned as the order was restored, but the damage had already been done. One man was dead, dozens were injured, and the gangs had shown just how powerful they really were. For the officers, it was a chilling reminder. Inside these walls, the gangs controlled more than anyone wanted to admit. The prison went on lockdown. Doors slammed, lights flickered, and the sound of steel bolts echoed through the blocks. Every inmate was searched, every cell torn apart for hidden weapons. Some men were thrown into solitary confinement, while others were dragged to the infirmary, bleeding and broken. But even in lockdown, whispers spread from cell to cell. Prison phones carried coded messages to the outside world. Families, friends, and street crews all got the word. The war inside Pelican Bay was not over. Life in solitary was different from the main yard. Prisoners were locked in concrete boxes with nothing but a bed and a toilet. The food was pushed through a slot in the door, and the only view of the outside world was a small window, covered by metal mesh. Some men broke down quickly, yelling and banging on the doors. Others stayed quiet, sitting in the dark, planning their next move. The silence was heavy, broken only by distant echoes of other inmates screaming into the night. Even as the prison tried to calm the storm, the gangs were already preparing for the next round. Weapons were being sharpened again. New alliances were forming. Some guards suspected that orders were coming from leaders who weren't even in the yard anymore. Men locked in solitary who still had power to command dozens with just a few smuggled notes. For a few days, things seemed calmer. Prisoners went back to routine: meals, yard time, and endless hours inside their cells. Some even played basketball or lifted weights as if nothing had happened. The guards tried to convince themselves the riot was over, but everyone inside Pelican Bay knew the truth. This was only the beginning. The gangs were waiting, watching, and planning. One quiet morning, as the inmates were being escorted to the chow hall, a guard noticed something strange. A group of men who usually sat apart had gathered together at one table. Their eyes scanned the room, their voices low, their hands hidden under the table. Something was happening, something bigger than before. The guard's heart began to pound. He reached for his radio, but before he could call for backup, one of the inmates suddenly stood up and shouted a single word. It was the signal. The second riot at Pelican Bay erupted with even more fury than the first. Chairs were overturned, trays of food crashed to the floor, and fists and blades turned the chow hall into a battlefield. Guards rushed in with shields and batons, shouting orders that were drowned out by the chaos. Within minutes, blood stained the walls and floors, and the air filled with pepper spray as officers fought to take back control. When it was finally over, the prison looked like a war zone. Several inmates lay unconscious. Others were dragged out with broken bones, and 2 men were declared dead. The chow hall was locked down, and the entire prison moved into emergency mode. For weeks after, every man was confined to his cell, with meals shoved through steel doors. The gangs had once again shown their power, and the cost was high. For the officers, the riots proved one thing: maximum security prisons aren't just places to hold criminals. They are battlegrounds, where gangs settle scores, spread fear, and build networks that stretch far beyond the prison walls. For the inmates, survival means choosing sides, staying alert, and never showing weakness. And so, the truth of what really happens inside maximum security prisons is clear. It's not just about punishment, it's about survival in a world ruled by violence, silence, and power. Pelican Bay, like many others, is a place where one wrong move can decide your fate. Behind the thick concrete and steel doors, lives are lost, wars are fought, and the cycle never truly ends. Because inside maximum security prisons, control is an illusion, and danger is always waiting for its moment to strike.